Darkness does not announce itself. It arrives quietly, swallowing sound, distorting direction, and convincing even trained minds that escape is impossible. On a forgotten stretch of hostile terrain, a rescue unit once believed they were minutes from annihilation. Equipment malfunctioned. Coordinates blurred. Every decision tightened the trap around them. What saved their lives was not superior firepower or advanced surveillance. It was a man no official briefing had mentioned. A man who understood the land the way others understood maps. Before this story unfolds completely, tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Tonight, your presence carries this hidden chapter across borders. The mission had been considered routine. A specialized extraction team entered a mountainous border region where fractured cliffs and abandoned mining tunnels carved unpredictable passageways beneath dense forest. Intelligence suggested a humanitarian convoy had been ambushed and survivors were being held in a subterranean complex once used for mineral transport. Satellite imaging offered limited clarity. Heavy mineral deposits disrupted signals. Drone feeds flickered into static. Command approved rapid deployment under narrow time constraints. Confidence remained high during insertion. That confidence dissolved within hours. Terrain did not behave as predicted. Trails terminated abruptly. Echoes misled orientation. The valley seemed engineered to misdirect intruders deliberately. The unit pressed forward regardless. They followed coordinates that shifted by meters every time equipment recalibrated. A narrow ravine forced them into single-file formation. Unstable gravel triggered minor rock slides with each cautious step. A communications relay failed unexpectedly, isolating them from remote oversight. Night descended sooner than expected beneath dense canopy. Thermal devices produced distorted readings from mineral interference. The path behind them became indistinguishable from the path ahead. What had begun as structured advancement slowly transformed into survival improvisation. They were not under direct assault. The land itself was the adversary, closing corridors, concealing depth, confusing distance. At the center of this uncertainty stood a civilian logistics coordinator named Elias Navarro. Officially, he had been contracted months earlier to help survey old transport shafts for humanitarian reconstruction efforts. He possessed no rank, no tactical authority, no combat training. Yet he had grown up among these slopes, exploring abandoned rail beds and ventilation tunnels long before conflict scarred the region. He understood how wind shifted inside hollow chambers and how water runoff shaped hidden cavities. When the team's primary navigation grid failed, eyes turned toward him reluctantly. Desperation reshapes hierarchy quickly.
Elias did not issue commands. He observed. He studied how mist lingered unevenly along a rock face. He noticed insects avoiding a particular patch of ground. He knelt to press his palm against soil that vibrated faintly with distant underground flow. The leader asked quietly whether an alternate route existed. Elias hesitated, weighing consequence. Guiding armed strangers through sacred valleys carried cultural implications beyond risk. Still, he remembered families who depended on stability returning to these hills. After a long silence, he spoke softly. There was another way. It was longer. It was dangerous. It was survivable. They followed him into terrain no digital archive recorded. The alternate passage began as a dried riverbed disguised by fallen branches. Beneath debris lay compacted sediment firm enough to support weight. Elias explained that seasonal floods once carved a drainage channel leading toward mining access corridors. The entrance had partially collapsed years earlier during monsoon storms. Most maps labeled it impassable. He assured them the obstruction concealed a crawl space wide enough for cautious passage. The decision to trust him marked a psychological shift. Authority transferred quietly from satellite coordinates to human memory. The crawl space narrowed gradually, forcing equipment redistribution. Heavy packs scraped stone. Dust filled confined air pockets. One operator panicked briefly when a section of roof shifted above him. Elias guided breathing rhythms, explaining how pressure dispersed along supporting beams, still intact beneath rubble. He pointed toward faint mineral streaks that indicated structural reinforcement from previous excavation. Progress slowed deliberately. Outside, weather intensified. Rainfall began pounding upper slopes, threatening flash floods through open ravines. Underground offered protection from storm, but introduced new vulnerability. Water would eventually search every hollow corridor. Hours passed without external contact. Inside the tunnel network, intersections branched unpredictably. Elias paused at each junction, listening rather than speaking. He closed his eyes and tilted his head slightly. Airflow moved differently along certain corridors, carrying cooler temperature from deeper chambers. He selected routes based on subtle current shifts that others could not detect. The team leader acknowledged privately that without this guidance, probability of encirclement would have increased dramatically. Trust deepened, not through rhetoric, but through repeated accuracy. They located signs of recent habitation near an old loading platform. Discarded ration packaging lay partially concealed beneath dust. Footprints overlapped inconsistently, suggesting movement under pressure. Elias advised delaying confrontation. He proposed navigating above the platform through a ventilation bypass he remembered from childhood exploration. The bypass required ascending a vertical shaft using corroded ladder rungs. Risk multiplied. Yet descending toward the platform meant exposure. The unit chose elevation. One by one, they climbed into darkness, guided by Elias counting distance between support braces from memory. From the elevated corridor, they observed activity below without detection. Survivors were confined within a reinforced storage alcove, guarded minimally because the maze itself deterred escape. Extraction planning unfolded silently. When movement began, speed replaced hesitation. Survivors were retrieved with minimal disruption. Then reality shifted abruptly. A distant tremor echoed through the network. Rainwater had begun penetrating outer tunnels. Debris blocked the primary exit path they had entered earlier. Communication equipment remained unreliable. The team stood inside a deteriorating labyrinth, filling slowly with runoff. Elias recalculated instinctively. He remembered a forgotten maintenance chute that drained excess water toward a western canyon. Access required traversing a flooded gallery where footing disappeared beneath murky surface. The leader requested certainty. Elias offered honesty instead. There were no guarantees. Remaining stationary invited collapse. Forward movement invited instability. Choice favored motion. They advanced into rising water illuminated only by helmet lamps reflecting against stone. The flooded gallery concealed submerged rails from mining carts long removed. Elias instructed the group to align along a raised ridge formed by sediment deposits. He demonstrated by stepping carefully, distributing weight along narrow high points barely visible beneath ripples. One rescued survivor stumbled, destabilizing balance. Elias gripped his arm and redirected weight backward, preventing full submersion into a deeper pocket. Progress continued methodically. Fear remained present, but coordination stabilized momentum.
Behind them, additional structural failures sent debris crashing into previously cleared corridors. Echoes magnified urgency. The maintenance chute appeared ahead, partially obstructed by fallen beams. Elias assessed quickly. Certain timbers bore load without splitting. Others would crumble under pressure. He marked viable supports using gentle taps to identify solid resonance. The team maneuvered survivors through the narrow ascent carefully, pushing upward toward faint daylight filtering through fractured stone. Emerging from the chute revealed a steep canyon wall slick with rain. The storm had intensified, masking noise but destabilizing ground. The planned extraction zone lay unreachable due to mudslides. Helicopter approach was impossible. Elias scanned terrain through sheets of water. He identified a narrow ridgeline, once used by shepherds decades earlier. The path remained hidden from aerial view due to overhanging rock shelves. Reaching it required lateral traversal across unstable slope. Options diminished. The ridge became salvation. They moved sideways across the incline, anchoring rope along natural outcroppings. Elias advanced first, testing each foothold before signaling safe passage. Lightning illuminated the valley intermittently, revealing floodwaters carving new channels below. Survivors struggled physically but maintained cohesion. The ridge eventually leveled into firmer ground beyond primary slide zones. From there, an alternative extraction coordinate could be established beyond the storm's densest turbulence. When aerial support regained partial signal clarity hours later, the team transmitted revised location data. Rescue arrived at dawn rather than midnight. Survivors were evacuated successfully. Operators followed. As the final aircraft prepared to depart, the leader turned toward Elias with visible gratitude. Official documentation would not capture his contribution adequately. Civilian involvement complicated formal reporting structures. Elias understood immediately. He declined invitation to accompany them. His responsibility remained tied to the valley. After departure, Elias descended the ridge alone. Storm damage required assessment for local communities. He inspected culverts clogged by debris and marked unstable ground for future repair. Word of the rescue circulated regionally, though details remained classified. Media coverage focused on tactical precision and coordinated deployment. No reference acknowledged the man who redirected outcome through memory and intuition rather than authority. Months passed. Reconstruction projects resumed gradually. Elias trained younger surveyors to interpret environmental cues beyond digital instruments. He taught them how fog pooled differently near hollow chambers and how bird flight patterns indicated wind channels along cliff faces. Knowledge transferred quietly, free from spectacle. Gratitude from rescued families arrived indirectly through aid organizations. Elias accepted it without fanfare. Occasionally, he revisited the canyon overlook where the ridge had preserved their lives. He felt neither pride nor regret. Circumstance had demanded action. He responded. Survival that night did not transform him into legend. It clarified obligation. He remained what he had always been, a steward of passageways, a reader of stone and weather, a guardian of routes forgotten by those who trusted only machinery. The untold story of the man who led them out alive reminds us that history often overlooks its quiet architects. Technology falters. Structures collapse. Plans disintegrate. Yet human intuition, shaped by lived experience, bridges chaos and continuity. Courage does not always wear insignia. Sometimes it carries familiarity with wind currents and sediment lines. Somewhere beyond official summaries, Elias Navarro walks the same ridges, ensuring that when darkness returns, someone will know the way forward.